Manipulation may sound like an evil word, but you can actually use it in your day-to-day life. Even people with good intentions use manipulations to change other people's behavior. Psychiatrists use manipulation every day, and even the police use it when they are responding to any kind of altercation. In fact, you might not notice it, but other people might be manipulating you too. By learning how to manipulate others, not only can you improve your quality of life, you will also learn how to counter the same techniques when they are used on you. The things you will learn in this book include, but are not limited to, how to manipulate people's emotions, how to make people feel so comfortable around you that they will willingly do anything for you, and many more. Obviously, since you will learn how to implement these manipulation techniques, you can easily spot when other people are using it on you, and then turn the tables on them. Do take note that this book was not written with evil intentions in mind. What you do with the information you learn from this book is up to you. I must warn you though, if you use these techniques with evil intents in your mind, your target will most likely pick up on your intentions and be more defensive. Again, please be responsible with how you use this book. Thanks again for downloading this audiobook. I hope you enjoy it. Chapter 1. How to build rapport and use it in your advantage. Have you ever met someone that you felt so comfortable with that it seems that you cannot help but tell them every little secret that you have? You need to perfect this skill to make it easier for you to manipulate people into actions that you set up for them. Even the U.S. Federal Bureau of Investigations uses this technique to gather intelligence, whether it is from their prisoners or when they send a plant to spy on other organizations. Building rapport quickly will break down walls and make other people more likely to open up to you. Here are some easy methods to spark up a conversation and instantly build rapport with anyone. Establishing a made-up time constraint. People generally do not feel comfortable when they have an awkward conversation with a stranger, so you need to give the other person some form of validation that you will not be taking up a lot of his time. Establish that you do not have that much time to talk as well, and this will make the other person lower his guard a bit. For instance, instead of just telling someone, "We need to talk, I promise this will be quick," which implies that there will be a long and drawling conversation ahead. Instead, what you should say is, "Hey, I was just on my way out, but before I go, can I ask you?" This establishes the fact that you are in a hurry yourself, and that you really just want a minute or two. The conversation itself is not the source of dread for most people. It comes from the uncertainty of how long this short discussion will actually be. This is the reason why the first step to building rapport is to let the other person know that there is a real end to the conversation in sight, and it is quite near. Sync your body language with your intentions. When you enter a room full of complete strangers, who are the people you are more drawn to? Will you feel comfortable approaching the people with scowls on their faces? Or will you like to be with the people who are smiling a lot and laugh sincerely? This is the reason why you need to make sure that your words and body language are aligned with each other, and that you are expressing a non-threatening aura. According to Dale Carnegie's popular book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, a simple smile is the most powerful, non-verbal technique that you can use to make people feel comfortable around you. Speak slow and with conviction. When you talk fast, you will only make yourself sound nervous, which will also make the people you talk to feel the same way. To prevent people from thinking that you are some sort of crazy person who is out to get them, you need to speak slowly and with a convincing tone. You do not need to speak super slow. In fact, you should not, because it will look as if you are mocking the other person. Speak normally, enunciate your words well, and use a clear tone of voice. This will make you sound credible and easier to talk to compared to people who speak quickly. Ask for a hand. Have you ever felt a sudden connection with someone who asks you for a small favor? In addition, do you feel a small pang of guilt in your chest when you had to turn down someone who asked you for a small favor? Especially when you know that you could have easily given the favor in the first place. You can actually use those same exact feelings to your advantage to manipulate a person. There is no greater tool that you can use to manipulate people other than using their sympathy and guilt against them. And the way to do it effectively is by asking for a small favor. As long as your request is easy, takes just a little of the person's time, and is asked in a non-threatening manner, the other person will find it hard to decline. When you ask for help, it also instills a false sense of confidence in the other person. He will feel that you cannot do anything to him since you came to him for help. This method will be discussed further in a later chapter, as there is more to this technique that you need to learn. These are just some of the methods that you can use to break down a person's mental defenses and make him feel comfortable around you. When you established a good rapport with other people, manipulating them later will be much easier. Chapter 2. Mirroring and reciprocating with your target. Mirroring is yet another powerful manipulation technique, which is why law enforcement uses it extensively during interrogations and when negotiating with hostage takers and the like. Mirroring makes use of the inner narcissist that is inside everyone, even you. This is what makes mirroring such a powerful tool, because you can use it on anyone if you are good enough. Once you know how to effectively mirror other people, you can also use your knowledge to prevent other people, especially narcissists, from using this technique against you. You can use mirroring by consciously imitating how the other person carries himself. This means you will copy how he sits, how he positions his hands, how he holds his head, and if you are really good at it, you can even sync your breathing pattern with his. You can even use a fake accent or speech pattern to mimic the other person. That is if you can. 4 steps to effective mirroring. When you do it properly, mirroring can quickly build rapport and establish a strong connection to another person. However, if you do it the wrong way, just like copying whatever it is the other person is doing in a pretty deliberate manner, you will only end up making the other person irritated at you. That kind of mirroring is easily caught and deemed inauthentic by the other person. Here's how you do mirroring the right way. 1. Establish a secure connection. You will know that you have an established connection with the other person if you feel it yourself. Here is how you do it properly and quickly. Fronting. You do this by giving the other person your complete and undivided attention. Face the other person and make him the center of your universe for the moment. Eye contact. This can be quite tricky because too little eye contact and it will make you seem disinterested, too much and it will make you look creepy. Try to look for the happy medium, glancing away from time to time but re-establishing eye contact immediately after. Triple nodding. The all-powerful triple nod does 2 things. First, it makes the other person talk much longer, and second, by agreeing to what the other person is saying, you are building a yes mindset. This means that once you get the other person to say yes to you, it will be likely that he will continue doing so, thus further strengthening your connection. Pretend and then stop. To complete the connection with the other person, you need to use your imagination. Pretend that the other person is the most interesting person that you have ever met. Really get into it, and act how you normally would when faced with such a person. Once you get into that mindset, stop pretending. You will unconsciously act appropriately and naturally, making it difficult for the other person to even notice that you were pretending in the first place, thus making it fall into the palm of your hand. Actually, after you establish a good connection with the other person, you will be mirroring him on your own without you knowing. However, to further build and amplify the connection you have with the other person, here are more techniques that you can use. Mimic pace and volume of the other person. When you mirror another person, you not only mimic the other person's physical actions, you mimic all the nonverbal things that he does, which includes the tone and volume of his voice. If the other person is talking fast and uses his hand gestures quite a lot, try to do the same, but do it subtly. If the other person speaks softly, lower your voice down to almost the same volume without making yourself look like you are whispering. 2. Pace and volume is much easier to mirror than actual actions, and they are actually harder to notice. 3. Identify the person's punctuator. By this time, you have been carefully observing the other person you have been mirroring, so you might have noticed his favorite punctuator, which is an action that he uses whenever he wants to make a point. These actions can be as small as raising an eyebrow, or grandiose, like waving his hands in front of him. To use punctuators to your advantage, you need to use the triple nod to goad the person into talking more, and then mimic his punctuator when you feel that he is getting to the good part of his story. This will further strengthen your connection, and the best part is that you do not need to utter a single word. 4. Testing the strength of your connection. This last step is completely optional, but it does help to know if the connection you have needs further reinforcement. To test your connection, you simply need to react to something that is completely unrelated to what you have been talking about, and observe if the other person mirrors your actions. For instance, while the other person is talking, scratch the tip of your nose. If the other person does the same after a few moments, then your connection is quite strong. Do not test your connection too often though, as the other person will most likely notice what you are doing, causing him to break out of the spell. In addition, you should only mirror the positive nonverbal actions, not the negative ones, like turning your body away, folding your arms in front of you, or looking away. Chapter 3. Setting the mood. Mood manipulation is not something new. In fact, every time you see a television advertisement for any kind of product, they induce a certain kind of mood in you. For instance, the geniuses behind the Tide Super Bowl ads used humor to make people think that every advertisement, regardless of the product, as long as there are clean clothes, is a Tide ad. You can also use this technique to gather information or manipulate another person into doing what you want. The easiest way to make people do the things that you want them to do is by playing with their emotions. It is much easier to make a person feel a certain way rather than appealing to their logical side. With that said, you need to act fast when you are using emotional manipulation. Do not give your target time to think and weigh his options. Here are a couple of techniques that let you use other people's emotions against them. Fear, then relief method. This is arguably one of the most evil manipulation techniques that people use, and when you use it in a discreet way, the other person will not see it coming. The textbook example of this technique is the classic good cop, bad cop routine that you see in TV shows and movies. This is where one person scares the hell out of the victim, and then another person would swoop in to save him from the bad cop. This sudden emotional roller coaster will break down his emotional barriers, thus making the person more likely to respond favorably to your requests. You can see this in everyday life too. Insurance agents use scare tactics to make people want to buy policies, and some bad managers tell their teams that their jobs are on the line, and then ask them to work overtime to appease the higher-ups at corporate. Gaslighting. Gaslighting is one of the most notorious methods of using another person's emotions against him. This technique will thoroughly confuse the other person, making him doubt his intelligence, and sometimes his own sanity. Most psychopaths do not even know the full details of gaslighting. Some are not even aware that the term exists, and yet they do it so masterfully without even thinking. Knowing about gaslighting and how to use it effectively will also serve as a defense for you in case somebody else uses it on you. You can gaslight another person when you have a conversation. Here are a couple things that you can do. When the other person asks a question, ignore it and answer a related but easier question asked earlier. Make sure to answer using a condescending tone to make the last person feel like his question was stupid. If the person asks the question again, dismiss it by saying that you are sure that it was already answered earlier. This will make the other person feel like he is not contributing and make him doubt his own memory of what just happened. If you do not have an answer to his question, dismiss it as not important. If the other person confronts you with something, tell him that there is something that needs your attention more. When the other person is telling you something, pull out your phone and browse your social media. This will make the other person feel like what he is discussing is not important, even if it is. Just pretend that you are not listening, but keep your ears open for valuable information. When giving instructions, be really vague, and then blame the other person for not understanding what you said. Make sure that your instructions are so confusing and almost impossible to follow to ensure that the other person messes it, and then blame him for not listening to your instructions. These are just some of the ways that you can use gaslighting. Do be careful when using this, as using it too often will make the other person catch on to what you are trying to do. Guilt tripping. Guilt is one of the most powerful human emotions. When another person is guilty about something, he will try to do anything to compensate. When you successfully make someone feel guilty, it will be much easier to plant an idea into his subconscious. This tactic will work best on people whom you observe to be prone to getting guilty. This works especially well on people who you have let down before or betrayed your trust. Here are a couple of ways you can put anyone on a guilt trip. Appeal to their conscience. This is when you bring up the other person's errors, no matter how small it may be, and then highlight every little mistake to make the offense seem bigger than it really is. Using the past. This is when you use a memory that both of you share where the other person owes you a favor for. You can use a rather embarrassing or guilt-stricken memory, but take note that there is a risk with doing so. Using a humiliating memory will make the other person put up his guard, as it is a clear sign of blackmail. Play the victim card. This is when you make the other person that he wronged you in some manner. You can bring up something that he did to you in the past, and then exaggerate on how bad it made you feel. Lay it on him rather thick to make the other person feel really bad, even though the past incident did not leave that much of an impression on you. However, you need to use the victim card sparingly. Only use it occasionally, because the other person will catch up on what you are doing if you use it consecutively. These are just some of the ways that you can use other people's emotions to your advantage. Emotional manipulation is one of the most evilest forms of manipulation, but if you use it responsibly, and you do not do it so much that you actually turn the other person into an emotional mess, you can use this technique to turn the tables to your advantage every time. Chapter 4. Creating comfort with the target. Imagine that your manipulation target is a cheap yet tough cut of meat. You know that you can still cook the cheap meat and eat it, but it will be quite tough. To make the cooking process easier, you need to tenderize the meat before you cook it. This does not mean that you have to beat your target with a tenderizing mallet. It means you need to make him comfortable around you, so he will not suspect that you are manipulating his thoughts and actions. Feign kindness. In the TV show Dexter, the main protagonist is a psychopathic killer that is used by the police to murder criminals that were charged with heinous crimes. In order to integrate with society, mainly in the forensic lab where he works in, he needs to put up a front so that his coworkers do not catch up on what kind of person he really is. What he does is make all of his coworkers like him so they would not harbor any kind of suspicion. The most notable thing that he does is that he brings donuts to work every Friday to share with colleagues. This small, yet nice gesture conditioned the other people in Dexter's office to think of him as the kind donut guy, thus making them completely ignorant of the fact that they are working with a serial killer. You can do the same thing as Dexter, not the killing part, but the feigning kindness to use others in your favor. The key here is moderation and consistency. Do not shower the person with gifts every time you meet, but do so every once in a while. Your gifts need not be extravagant. Actually, you should avoid giving valuable gifts as it would look like you are bribing your target. It could be as simple as treating the person to a cup of coffee when you are at work, or you can buy him a round of drinks every once in a while when you go out drinking. Do this often enough, and he will start getting comfortable around you. Step up the charm. If you have ever played any kind of role-playing game, regardless if it is a video game or a tabletop game like Dungeons & Dragons, you already know how important charm is to advance in your quests. Sure, you can train your character to become an expert warrior to just brawl your way to victory, but you can also be a bard with a high charisma to charm your way into getting what you need effortlessly. Fortunately, charm can be learned, or at least faked. There are lots of online courses and references that you can use to increase your charm factor. Read fashion and lifestyle blogs. They are chock full of tips on how to appear charming to others. However, you need to rein in your charm a bit. Do not go overboard, or people will think that you are up to something, which you are. Share your own secrets. Another way to gain a person's trust is to make him believe that he has yours. You can do this easily by being the first one to share a deep-kept secret of yours. When you share something about yourself, you will make the other person feel like he has control over the situation, that he has something on you in case things go south. Of course, you should not share anything that is actually true. For instance, when you are out drinking, casually slip in your secret in the conversation and make sure that your target heard you clearly. You do not even have to frame your dark secret with the other person with a, "Hey, can I tell you a secret?" Just tell him casually during the course of your conversation. When you make the other person feel like he has the higher ground, they will take down their defenses and make them more susceptible to your suggestions. Conceal your intentions using altruism. It is important that your target sees you as a good person. If you ever need to take negative actions on or around your target, like criticizing and putting the blame on your target, regardless if it is your fault or not, and other behaviors, you should find a way to veil them in altruism. This might sound sinister, but trust me, it works. For instance, if you had to yell at your target because you got too frustrated at him, you can immediately apologize for your outburst, and then tell him that you were only trying to help him. Tell the person that you are sorry for being so emotional, but it just happened because you genuinely wanted him to succeed. If you do this properly, and you time your apology just right, the other person might also apologize to you for messing up. Now, if he caught you criticizing someone else, immediately follow it up with saying that no matter what horrible things other people do, you will always be there for him. Instead of criticizing your target's poor performance, ask him what you can do to help. This will make him look at you as a kind of person whom he would not want to disappoint. If your target fears you, he will be afraid of your anger and put up his defenses against your attacks. However, if he respects you for being so kind, he will gladly lower his defenses for you on his own. He will feel much worse when he knows that you are disappointed in him. With these techniques, you can get anyone feeling comfortable around you, and this will open up countless opportunities to influence them into doing the things that you want them to do for you. Human beings are fueled by emotions most of the time, which is why you need to keep your emotions in check while you manipulate the feelings of others. This disconnect will protect you from any repercussions in case your plan fails. Chapter 5. The Power of Doing Favors. Ask and you shall receive. This old saying is also applicable in manipulation tactics, but you need a bit of preparation first. Once you understand the power of favors, you can use it to ask anyone for anything you want. Asking favors to gain favor. Ben Franklin once said, "He that has once done you a kindness will be more ready to do you another than he who you yourself have obliged." Franklin actually put this to the test during the time when the Founding Fathers were still drafting the Constitution. At the time, Franklin faced bitter opposition from a powerful lawmaker, and he needs to make him change his mind and to change sides. Franklin knew that flattery would not work, and bribery will only make him a shallow ally. He needed to manipulate the person's mind to actually like him. Franklin knew that the legislator owned a copy of a very rare book, so he asked his rival if he could borrow it from him. The legislator allowed him to borrow the book, and Franklin returned it after a couple of days, with a short note of thanks. This simple act actually transformed the legislator and made him think highly of Franklin. This is the result of cognitive dissonance. What might have went through the legislator's mind might be similar to this. I only lend things to people whom I trust. I lent a book to Benjamin Franklin. Therefore, I must trust Franklin. The reason behind this sudden change of heart comes from his mind justifying the reason why he lent Franklin. A person he hated once, a rare and expensive book. Rather than thinking of other reasons why, the legislator's mind found it much easier to change his views on Franklin. It might seem counterintuitive to ask a person for a favor to gain his trust, but it does work, as long as the favor is not as big, of course. So if you want to gain a person's trust, ask him for a small favor, and reciprocate by showing your gratitude. Giving favors without expecting anything in return. Of course, you should not just ask for favors from your target all the time. You need to give it too. In fact, the best approach is to ask for a favor first, just to get your foot in the door, and then reinforce your connection with the target by doing him favors. Do small favors such as buying him a coffee when you meet, or even buying him lunch from time to time. The reciprocity effect will make your target feel uncomfortable unless he returns your favor, which makes him more susceptible to your suggestions. However, there is a caveat. You need to make yourself believe that you are doing the favors without expecting anything in exchange. Make it seem like you have no ulterior motive. This means you do not call in the favor later. You just let the other person marinate in the uncomfortable feeling brought about by the reciprocity effect before you spring your trap. The longer you wait, the more susceptible the target will be to your actions. The trick with giving favors is that you never have to call them in. When you harness its power properly, the people whom you gave favors to will unconsciously repay their debts to you without you asking. What if the other person refuses? Do not be discouraged when your target declines to do you a favor. In fact, it is actually advantageous for you, believe it or not. If you treat people nicely, see the previous chapter, they would have a very difficult time declining you a second time. So if your target declines to give you a favor the first time, just let it slide, and then tell him that it is actually no big deal, which is actually true. However, you should not ask for a favor the next day. Just wait a couple of days and never speak of the subject for the meantime. It is actually better if your target forgets that he declined you a favor, as it will nag him even harder when you ask a favor next time. Nod your head slightly when asking for a favor. This is where the mirroring technique discussed in the earlier chapters will come into play. When you are asking your target for a favor, lightly nod your head up and down while maintaining slight eye contact. In time, your target will mirror you and start nodding his head in agreement, which will make him more susceptible to doing you a favor. So it might seem strange, but when it comes to manipulation, ask and you shall receive actually does apply. Conclusion. Thank you again for downloading this audio program. I hope this audiobook was able to help you learn how to manipulate people to do the things that you want. All of the techniques mentioned in this book have been proven to work, and they are still being used by law enforcement officers to this day to gain information from perpetrators that will help in the capture of their confederates. The next step is to put the things that you just learned into practice. However, be careful not to do too many things too quickly. I cannot promise that nothing will happen to you if your target catches on to what you are doing. So please be careful and practice mindfulness when using the manipulation techniques you just learned. Finally, if you enjoyed this audiobook, then I'd like to ask you for a favor. Would you be kind enough to leave a review for this book? It'd be greatly appreciated. Thank you and good luck. This has been Manipulation, the ultimate guide to influence people with persuasion, mind control, and NLP with highly effective manipulation techniques.